Good evening and welcome to this month's episode of Africa's Boardroom. I'm Stephen Gagnon. Well, coming up on the show, my guests and I discuss people's perspective on the role of government. Are there various principles that should guide service delivery across all public services? And what are the current shortcomings in public service delivery? These are the issues we'll be answering in the show. I'm joined by Monica Rubombora, Senior Executive of Health and Public Service for Accenture South Africa, and Gauteng's MEC for Education, Barbara Creasy. Welcome both. Thanks for coming in this evening.
Good evening.
Monica, I'll start with you. People's perspective on the role of government. Why is it important to discuss these?
What is important in this case is that we get to hear from the voice of the people right on the ground, bottom up, what is important to them and what value government is doing in terms of service delivery. So it is important once in a while to put a dipstick and listen to the voice of the people.
Barbara, outside of elections, when do we actually interact with regional governments, with local governments and with national governments? Do we have forums for this, or do we have to wait until the election time to voice our approval or disapproval?
Not at all. We do have regular Izimbizo. These are public meetings that are hosted in communities by various MECs. Obviously in our own portfolios we also do a lot of work. I personally meet with principals, I meet with school governing body associations, with learners, representative councils of learners. All of these are opportunities to get the major role players in education more involved. Something that we think is very important to develop this greater level of participation and commitment to what President Zuma calls his non-negotiables for getting our education system right. Teachers, learners in class on time for 7 hours a day teaching and learning.
Well, Monica, you've just completed at Accenture the Global Cities Forum. You looked at 17 cities across the world. It took 3 years to do this. Yes. From what you've heard in the forum and in the discussions, are people satisfied with the interaction they're having with government?
Well, it varies from city to city. We've been running this study for the last 3 years, as you've rightly indicated, across both emerging and developed countries. And the findings are that overall, if we compare, for example, South Africa, and in this case, the Greater Johannesburg area where we specifically conducted this study, there are various perceptions that they have and various expectations. So the expectations are extremely high of the government and what they should be doing. They do understand that the resources are very constrained, quite limited, but at the same time, they expect a kind of service that will be able to cater for both limited budgetary resources, but at the same time deliver high quality, high value services, public services in this case. So you'll find that each city has a different emphasis on what they expect, but overall the levels of satisfactions also vary from city to city.
And what level of satisfaction did we have for Johannesburg?
Interesting, Johannesburg, when we conducted this study for the Johannesburg area, it was Johannesburg, New Delhi and Rio de Janeiro. We conducted around the end of last year, around the September timeframe. At that time, if you recall, there was a lot of negative press about the country in the run-up to the current 2010 World Cup. And we were a bit skeptical that maybe we will get a lot of negative views from the citizens who are living within this area. And our findings now, the report has just been published, is that 73% of the residents in this area consider this a very exciting place to live in. In fact, the terms that they use were saying vibrant, full of possibilities. And they do have, of course, other areas that they feel are falling short. But overall, we compare very favorably with cities like New York and Singapore. They are around the 70% kind of percentage of satisfaction with the area that they live in. So Johannesburg, I think for us, was that despite all what other people think about it, and residents are very happy with even the government, what they're providing now. That, however, does not say that when they look out for areas of performance improvement, they stick out also quite highly. But in this case, they are very satisfied with the city.
Of course, Barbara, we know that education is always under the spotlight. It is one of the biggest budget allocators in our national budget. But of course, as Monica said, it is a balancing act because you do have limited resources. You are expected to deliver. How do you balance that?
Well, I think first and foremost, President Zuma has said that education is the #1 priority of this political term. And the reason is that we recognize, as do our citizens, that having a decent education will open enormous possibilities in terms of future life. The fact that our education system isn't delivering the quality of learners and the achievements in the right learning fields. For example, our achievements in maths and science, the number and the quality of university passes that we get from our matric exams, all of those are areas which our citizens value very highly, and we also recognize as a department are areas where we need to get dramatic improvements over the next 4 years.
Whose responsibility is that though? Is it national government or is it provincial government's responsibility?
It's our responsibility, working together obviously with the National Ministry of Basic Education, to get our schooling system right. And we've been given very clear targets to improve language and literacy in primary school, to improve basic numeracy in the primary school phase, but we've also been set an 80% matric pass rate in this province by 2014, and it's been said very specifically we need to increase the number of university passes, and we need to make sure we do much, much better in our maths and science results.
On that point of whether where does the responsibility lie, whether it's national, provincial, and local government, in our findings, the citizens really don't mind or care much about which sphere of government is responsible.
As long as it's done.
Exactly. As far as they're concerned, if I'm living in Soweto and I have to send my child to school, most of them do bus them into the city center. Whether they're crossing boundaries of national or provincial or local, they really don't care about that. What they do care about is I'm going to get a quality service wherever I go. And for that perception, they're looking for more collaboration across the spheres of government on delivering at the end of the day, what's the outcome that you want to be looking for. And from government point of view, I think that's very important. How do we make sure that there's no duplication of effort, that we always focus on the stakeholder, and the stakeholder is the citizen, on what the end result should be. So the outcomes become very, very critical in this case.
And did they feel they were getting enough interaction with education departments?
Well, for education departments, their view is that all they care for, I want my child to get a quality education. And I want to be able to get access when I need to the right school of my choice when I want to send a child to school. And that's what they care about, not to be bounced from school to school or from pillar to post. So when I need to send my child to a particular, to prepare for matric, for example, I need to be able to know, first of all, where do I go? What is the best school available there? What kind of information is available? Do they have teachers? Do they interact with me? At the end of the day, it becomes a very personal decision, and they want the government to enable that to happen, to make it much easier for them to access a quality education for their children.
And what is the government doing to ensure that they are meeting those needs, Barbara?
Well, I think first and foremost, we do have almost a 98% uptake amongst children in our province in the education system, and that's a very positive uptake of education. We have one of the highest uptakes of girl learners in the world, so we compare favorably in terms of access with a developed country.
But it's quality we have to focus on.
Yes, and that's the issue. And I think that we still do have differentials in the quality of our education system. There is still a situation where the majority of university passes, the majority of maths and science distinctions come from a particular grouping of schools. Many of those schools are in what would have been the formerly advantaged areas. We have enormous problems with the quality of education in our township schools and in our rural schools. And from the perspective of the department, this is where we're focusing. We've got 1066 underperforming schools in the province. 790 of them are primary schools, 276 are high schools. And that is where we're putting our money and our energy, focusing first of all in the primary schools around basic literacy and numeracy, because we have a shocking statistic in this province that half of the children that leave primary school can't read and write. And from the outside, these primary schools would appear to be well functioning, but the outcomes are not what we need.
Of course, education is just one public service. Are there guidelines and principles that should guide all public services according to the same standards?
Well, I think that in each political term, government does identify priorities, and in this particular term, health, education, creating sustainable economic growth with jobs, safety, as well as rural development and food security, those are the priorities of this particular term. And the importance of that is it allows for this issue that you were talking about earlier of synergy between what national and provincial and local government are doing. It allows for focusing of budgets. And I must say that in this particular term, having been involved in government in one capacity or another for the past 16 years, I'm very excited by the increasing synergy that's emerging, the increasing commitment of national and provincial government to identify priorities and fund those priorities. So even in this very difficult economic climate, you would see a situation where education and health are receiving the lion's share of what is available in the budget and whatever small increases are available. And that's something that really, I think, inspires confidence and also commitment from those of us who are trying to get some of these core services right.
Of course, the three top issues that came out of the survey, Monica, were education, health and in migration, which is migrants coming into South Africa or also moving into cities. Health, what are the concerns that citizens might have with health service delivery?
Well, if you look at what is happening in this particular region, it is that there's a lot of strain happening on those particular two areas, especially health and education. Because the numbers are increasing of people coming in because they expect that this will be the region that would provide it. But unfortunately, as I say, the budgetary and other resources are quite limited. So for health, the main issues that came through were how do I access the health services, but also the efficiency of that system thereof. Most of them that were raising concerns around waiting times either to have a procedure or to be seen by the relevant health official when they are, so the queues in this case came out as a critical issue. So most of them have had, if they need a very good quality service, they travel to the big public health facilities, the hospitals that are already buckling under pressure anyway, but that's where they expect the service to be offered. But at the same time, there's something next door to them, a healthcare facility that they don't go to because they may find that maybe the nursing services are not available or the medicines that they want are not available. And the assumption is if I go to the larger health facility, I'll be able to get that. So it's also about access in terms of information of where those services are, and also about how the whole process is managed, the waiting periods. So access and waiting periods was a key issue under the health services.
Of course, education getting the lion's share of budgetary allocations in South Africa, but there's often criticism, and not necessarily for education, that funds are misallocated, aren't spent properly. Is this something that's being addressed within departments?
Yes, I think that, you know, all MECs are going to have to sign service delivery agreements with premiers. The premiers are signing with the president. Those service delivery agreements for education and for health are very focused on outcomes. So what I'm going to have to sign around is improving the matric results, improving our outcomes in literacy and numeracy in primary schools. That focuses the mind, it also focuses the budget. Because if I'm going to achieve in those areas, then I need to put whatever surplus money we have into improvements in those particular areas.